Well, ahoy there, you wee swabbies. I bet you enjoyed that first story, didn't you? And you have been waiting on pins and needles to get to the next one. Well, it's just about time, but you may notice we've got someone over here who's taken an interest in this. Well, that's because this particular story is called The Pirate Who Tried to Capture the Moon. My young friend Roger right there, he comes from an otherworldly place, and he's very interested in how a pirate can capture the moon. Let's tune in and see. The Pirate Who Tried to Capture the Moon by Dennis Hazley. Illustrations by Sue Truesdale. There was once a fierce pirate who loved nothing. He lived alone on an island where he strode about in armor, waving a broadsword, and he watched for ships to capture. Through his glass, he spied the ship of flowers with its daffodil flag and its sail of Queen Anne's lace. Day after day, he followed that ship in his dark schooner and kept it in the shadows of his black sails. He smiled as the petals curled, the stems bent, and finally one white rose dropped into the sea. The fierce pirate chained that ship to his island, and he laughed. He looked at the sky and saw the moon sailing as it pleased. He lifted his sword, jiggled his armor, and said, "Someday, moon, I'll capture you too." From his lookout, he saw ships of horses tossing. Red stallions galloped on its deck. Black coats leaped above the waves. The pirate gave an angry kick. He chased that ship in his steady galleon. From his cannons he shot bits into the mouths, and the horses reared. From his guns he shot saddles, and the horses rolled, until one white mare dove into the sea. The fierce pirate chained that ship to his island, and he laughed. But then he saw the moon tossing through the clouds, sailing as it pleased. He waved his sword, thumped his armor, and said, "Someday, moon, I'll capture you too." Then he piled his deck with sticks and twigs, watching for the ships of birds, which no one could catch. When it came into sight, with its escort of eagles, its sails like wings, he sat and waited till it landed in its huge floating nest. Then he caught that ship that no one could catch, and he laughed. He laughed until the sea was empty and there was nothing sailing anywhere except the moon in the sky. The pirate knew it was time to capture the moon. He climbed up his mast and waved his sword above his head, shouting, "Moon, follow me!" Moonlight shone on his armor, but the moon drifted free. So the pirate shot at the moon. The dark barrels of his cannon swiveled high. Boom! 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 But the cannonballs fell straight back and slid into the sea with hardly a splash. And still the moon sailed across the sky. The pirate stormed down to the ship of birds, and he tied a raven to his head, hawks to his arms, heron to his legs, a crow to his chest. Through the moonlight slowly he rose, waving his sword, but the birds grew tired. Their wings failed. They fell through a cloud, and the pirate dropped into the sea like a piece of clay, while the moon sailed across the sky. The pirate paced back and forth in his rusty armor, Back and forth, to and fro, he walked circles, day and night, until he passed an old ship of books he had captured long ago. He searched in its broken decks and shredded sails until he found a book that told all about the moon. Then the pilot laughed. He took that book and 6 horses and sailed for land. He harnessed the mares to his ship, and he ripped across the earth. He ripped over fields and streams, leaving a scar. Slowly the pirate, who loved nothing, moved over the land in his ship, looking for everything that the moon loved. The moon loves to shine through curtains, said the book. It loves to float in pools of water. It likes to peek over the small hills. The moon loves poetry. The pirate slashed curtains from farmhouses and drapes from mansions. He cut curtains from stages, and he loaded them all onto his ship. Into barrels he scooped frog ponds and reflecting pools and swimming holes. He chopped at small hills with his sword and shoveled them into his hold. He captured poets and everything else he knew the moon loved. He swiped candles from the tables of Italian restaurants. He grabbed sadly playing violins from under the chins of gypsies. He captured lovers as they gazed at each other softly, walking hand in hand. He netted baying wolves and children who danced all by themselves in the middle of the night. And the pirate sailed that bursting ship back to his island, and he waited. Clouds moved across the sky. The wind blew an empty sea. And finally, the moon rose. But when it looked down, it saw that everything it loved was gone. So it moved down to take a little look, a wee bit closer. And the fierce pirate, sitting on his island, laughed. The moon looked again, but still it saw no curtains. It saw no small hills. So again, it came a little closer. The pirate laughed again and stood up to sharpen his sword. The moon looked and saw nothing and came still closer. It looked and looked through the streets and villages and down empty wells. There were no pools of water. There were no poets, no lonely dances. And so it came closer still. And the pirate, seeing the moon come lower, yelled out, "Moon! I have captured every ship and everything you love, and now I will capture you." Then he threw open the hatch, and the moon saw everything it loved streaming out of the pirate's ship and onto the pirate's island. Kitchen curtains and long candles and violins playing sad music and moody poets and lonely wolves and dancers who danced in the middle of the night. It gave a little sigh and came closer to the island, and the pirate watched. Still, the moon drew closer, and the pirate saw it grow. Well, I didn't know the moon was quite so big, he thought. And still the moon came down, closer, still closer. And the pirate, well, he started to feel afraid. He tore through the book that told all about the moon, but he couldn't find a place that told how big the moon was. And the moon came down, growing larger, larger than the pirate ship, larger than his island, larger than anything the pirate had ever seen. Oh, the pirate trembled, and he thought, well, if I return everything that I've captured, that will surely stop the moon. So he cut the saddles and the bits from the wild horses and the chains from the flowers, and they drifted out to sea. And a shadow passed across the giant moon. It was the birds streaming away. And still the moon came down. So the pirate freed the madly playing violins and the howling wolves, the poets chanting and the pools bursting from their barrels, and he sent them sailing home. Moonlight spread over the waves, it covered his empty island. The pirate lifted his trembling soul as the whole sky became the moon. And then the moon stopped and waited. The pirate stared into its light, and a wild shiver ran through him like a wave. He forgot about being afraid. He forgot about being fierce. He lowered his sword, he dropped his armor, and he whispered, "Moon, wonderful moon, it is you that has captured me." And the moon glowed through him and above him, and then slowly it started back into the sky, growing smaller, growing distant, until once again it sailed as it pleased. It drifted over the sea and over the island, where now there was someone new the moon loved, who loved the moon. For at that moment, in the middle of the night, the pirate began to dance. Well, I hope you've been entertained, wee lads and lassies. Tune in again, I will have another story for you, which I know you are all wanting to know how to do, which is how to be a pirate. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye now.